My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
So good, so good, so good.
Just in and so good. Thousands of winter deals are in Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means thousands of fresh reasons to rack.
Because we get the latest trends for way less.
Because I've been looking for these.
Because the best deals go fast.
Save big with up to 60% off. Sam Edelman, Sorel, Free People, Cole Haan, and more cold weather finds. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
You know, I've been talking about earned media value for quite some time on this podcast. My friends at Eisenberg have just raised the bar on earned media benchmarks with their social index. Social Index now gives you globally earned media values across a growing list of 6 geographies for all your KPIs across the top 7 social platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. You can now visualize these values for deeper analysis, and they have a look-back window over 2 years of historical comparisons. Social Index is updated daily. Don't get stuck with old data. Over 1,000 companies have used the Social Index to understand the ROI of their social campaigns. And if you work with a social agency, you should demand they incorporate earned media values into your reports. Get your earned media value for social content. Visit earnedmediavalues.com /Alan. Again, that's earnedmediavalues.com /ALAN.
For all of us, it's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today. Today on the show, I've got Brian Goldfarb. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at SolarWinds. Brian brings over 20 years of experience driving growth at some of the world's largest and most respected technology companies, such as Tenable, Splunk, Salesforce.com, and Google. On the show today, we talk about SolarWinds, the types of solutions they provide, a cybersecurity event that was pretty horrible for the company and for industry overall, and how they came back from that and were able to recover. We talk about what marketing looks like at SolarWinds and the role of the CMO and how that shifted, changed, and what we should be thinking about as it relates to the role itself. That and much more with Brian Goldfarb. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Really good to be here.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing about SolarWinds, but before we get there, I hear you've had this brush with fame early in life on a game show. I have to hear more.
That you clearly did your deep intelligence here. Jeez. Yes, it's true. When I was a child, 400 years ago, I was on a game show. Mark Summers was the host. He was he was the Nickelodeon fame.
Oh yeah. I know the slime show. I can't remember the name of it.
I wasn't on the slime show. Yeah. I was on it was a show called Pick Your Brain. It lasted like 1 season, maybe 2. And they brought in 5th graders. And the game show, trivia, with stupid people tricks and things. But I did have a brush with fame. I had a brush with failure more than anything, not just fame, where I had a chance to win. I think a lifetime supply of Hershey chocolate or something amazing. Actually, I think it was a scholarship. That would have been pretty awesome. And I totally failed. The question for the audience, you can check your own knowledge. Can you beat a 5th grader? What is the largest Great Lake?
I only know this because I think you might have mentioned this question to me before. Superior.
Yes. I said Michigan, which is the better lake. but it's not the biggest.
I like it. Quality over quantity.
Yeah, unfortunately, the judges didn't see it that way, and I lost unserved. So it is what it is. But yeah, it was a fun start to my very short TV career.
I love it. From a early TV career to now being the chief marketing officer at SolarWinds, where did you get your kind of professional start, and what were some of the highlights along the way?
Yeah, you can tell my trivia background is what got me to where I am. My career began in the early days of the internet, like working for a internet service provider. It was doing dial-up PPP internet, which I think most people don't even know what the heck that is anymore. Or like a modem used to make squawking noises. I was helping do tech support and sysadmin-y stuff back in the day, and kind of bridged into being a web developer in the, call it, 96-ish time frame, and was building early websites onto the internet, which was really cool, and writing code when you didn't have to be very good at it because no one was. And that's where I began. Then I took a bit of a right turn where I went to college. They're like, everyone should be an investment banker. I was like, okay, cool, I can do that. So I went and worked on Wall Street a little bit and didn't love that too much, and stumbled into a job doing product management at Microsoft, which we would call product marketing today, although I didn't know that at the time. I was just insulted they didn't want me to be an engineer. And that was my first real marketing job, and kind of just been rolling through that. The 10 years at Microsoft, doing all kinds of cool things, mostly in the developer space. So there was some alignment with my technical background. And I launched Google Cloud Platform, which everyone knows today. But when I started at Google, it didn't exist, which was neat. I remember doing the brand exploration for the gear, and I'll take that as a claim to fame. There's a good Kubernetes story in there too. And then I've worked at some other companies you may have heard of. I worked at Salesforce, ran platform marketing there. I was the CMO at Splunk, the operations and cybersecurity space. I was CMO at Tenable, another cybersecurity company. So I've worked at a couple startups. So it's been varied over a long time, and now been in this seat for, I was counting it in weeks, but the reality is almost a year. I'll acknowledge. I'll round forward now, and it's been awesome.
I love it. I have to ask, because Kubernetes is a funny word. You said there's a story there.
The story is not about the naming.
Okay.
The naming was, there was a guy, Joe Beta, and Craig McCluskey were the original creators of Kubernetes, which was really the productization of Borg, which was the technology that ran Google's data centers and how their model worked, which was it was basically containerization before anyone knew what containerization was. And they call it Kubernetes, but the story is the logo. So if you look at the logo, it's the little captain's wheel, like an old sailing ship captain's wheel. But in Google, the brand identity used the gear, which was a hexagon, and products got hexagons. It was always a big deal. I was the arbiter as the marketing leader of the hexagon. And they came to me, and I'm super smart. Like, we have this open source thing. It's going to be a big deal. We should get a hexagon. And I was like, no. And so to spite me, which they'll say this. There's recordings on the internet where they say this. So unfortunately, it's true forever. I can't even lie about it anymore. They created a 7-sided hexagon, which is why the Kubernetes logo is the 7-sided thing, because it wasn't a hexagon. And therefore, they didn't need my approval. And it did end up becoming a big deal. And I was totally wrong. And it should have had a hexagon. And I acknowledge that. But look, in the spirit of failure, like, that's number 2.
Yeah. Despite maybe getting the Great Lakes question wrong, and despite maybe denying a hexagon, or maybe a hexagon was warranted, you've done pretty well.
And, you could argue the fact that it's not a hexagon worked in their favor, because then it was outside of the portfolio and everyone used it. Now,
that's true.
Now those stories are lore, which makes it super fun.
I love it. Love it. Like you said, you are the CMO now at SolarWinds. Let's talk a little bit about SolarWinds. How do I think about the company? What's the scope of the company itself, the solutions you guys provide, et cetera?
Yeah, SolarWinds is an amazing company, 25 years old. There aren't that many of those around with that kind of legacy, and kind of been a pillar of the monitoring and IT operations space. Started solving problems for everyday sysadmin, which I used to be in the same time period. Actually, Winds came a little after I was doing that, would have been useful, frankly, at the time, and got to start providing useful tools that help system administrator and IT people solve real problems around networking and performance and monitoring and understanding their environments and their estates. And it's built quite an impressive portfolio based on that foundation over the last 2.5 decades. And so the way to think about the company today in modern parlance is we think of ourselves as providing monitoring and observability solutions for IT professionals. We also do service management and service desk. And we believe that the concept of finding problems and fixing problems are really one. And so combining observability solutions and service desk solutions and over time, incident response into one common platform is the future of this market. And so taking all of that history and our relationship with hundreds of thousands of real practitioner users and bridging that to the future and doing that both on-prem, which was our foundation, given it was a long time ago and the cloud didn't really exist, to the cloud using on-premises and SaaS products.
And you're in almost every corporation. It feels, I don't know if your market penetration is that high, but it feels like you're everywhere.
That high, we're like 80% plus of the Fortune 500. We have hundreds of thousands of customers. You typically find SolarWinds somewhere inside of a company. And that sometimes that's a strategic platform that they've made huge bets on, and there's great companies we've done that with. And then sometimes it's a guy or some person in the IT department that just had a problem to solve, and SolarWinds was the best, most effective way to do that. And that gives us a kind of wide range of interacting with our customers.
Now, for some people listening to this, they may say, wait, I know that name of this company, and there was this cyber event.
Oh, I thought you were going to say we were a clean energy company. I get that. Oh, you work in clean tech. I'm like, you're definitely not in my ICP.
No windmills. No windmills.
Yeah. Oh, do you do solar energy? No. But you're not buying my software, so I don't care. It's a fascinating case study in selecting out qualifying questions and ICP identification. But yes, a lot of people also know us based on a cybersecurity incident that occurred against the company, which is where we're at, called Sunburst.
And to go through something like that's terrible, regardless of what kind of company you are. But how do you, as like a marketing leader, as a company, how do you think about recovering from an event like that?
Yeah, it's super terrible. And it was terrible timing, highly sophisticated, unforeseeable attack by a nation state actor, which is effectively unpreventable by anyone using never before seen novel techniques in a supply chain attack that now has become more prevalent. And I think the world's desensitized to it, but at a moment where they were targeting multiple software companies. I think we get a lot of credit from where I sit. It's terrible, established that. We get a lot of credit for how we handled it. Super transparent, super customer focused. Really, I think, led the industry in what it looks like to do collaboration and really have pushed public-private cooperation, which if you look at the stories that people tell now, many years later, like that's front and center. And I think we get credit for pioneering what that could and should look like in a lot of ways. And our customers, you talk about we're everywhere. We were blessed with 98% retention rate because our customers loved our software. They loved who we were. We had those relationships and helped us kind of work through that part of the journey. And so when you take what does that mean now, right? I like to say get beyond the breach. And I think we're beyond the breach in a lot of ways, where as a marketer, it's how do you get people thinking about the company where that isn't the first thing they say or it isn't the first thing they see because the Google algorithm is awful and there's a lot of ink, right, unfortunately, on those things.
Right.
And so there's a big part of my job is how do you reimagine who we are as a next generation company where that isn't part of the story? How do you establish that not only in our hearts, and I think at the company level we're there, but with our customers' hearts and minds? And then how do you do that in the ways people discover things, right? For people that know us, which is lots, there's not a lot to talk about. People who don't know us, like intimately, there's a lot to talk about. And I think that's the hardest challenge we have.
It's pretty amazing. I don't know if we in marketing think about this, but you always hear, depending on what podcast you listen to, about how to drive your performance to higher levels, right? You hear the analogy of the elite performers. It's not about the performance, it's the recovery in between the performances, right? And it sounds like you guys have gone through that exact scenario of like, how do we recover fast? How do we recover? How do we get to the next level of our performance, not focused on what's happened behind us? So,
yeah, it's right. Do you drink electrolytes? How fast the recovery time? Yeah, I don't know how much of that's age driven, but no, it's true, right? I think it really does get difficult for any organization when there's a negative event, period, right? Earned or otherwise. And as a marketer, what gets interesting, and one of the reasons I joined, is the opportunity to be able to help with that next step. Because everyone deserves those next moments. Like I said, our customer base stuck with us. They're like super happy. So it's how do you convince and engage with the rest and help them see the same things? And I think that's like fundamentally a super exciting opportunity.
Love it. Well, what does marketing look like at SolarWinds? You talked about, for those that don't know you, there's a lot to know. So how do you structure marketing in itself?
For our fellow marketeers, every good new CMO, I came in and I did a huge reorg, because that's what you do. I didn't change the colors, though. They did that before I arrived. That was good. I didn't have to go down that route. They changed the orange to make it awesome, which is where it's really good. But I run a fairly traditional functionalized marketing organization. I believe pretty deeply that as a discipline, we do best when we can hire experts in domains and let them do what they do great, and then manage the complexities of a matrix. So corporate marketing, demand generation, product marketing, strategy and ops or MOPS, like I think most people would do it. I think the one thing we have that would be unusual is we have a marketing engineering organization. We do a lot of IT work out of marketing for a variety of reasons, some good, some not so good, and have a pretty large investment in technology resources. So the chief marketing technology officer hat, in a lot of ways, I wear in the rev tech staff. And it's a timing statement more than anything. The company grew up before a lot of the tech stack existed, and we built a lot of things ourselves, which is good and bad. But that's how we structure it today, or since we made the changes in the summer, and it's been really positive.
I love it. You hit on something we should talk about, which is like this evolving role of the CMO. Feels for some time now, we've talked about roles going away, then they come back. Like, where's your head? What do you think about the CMO role, and what should it really be focused on?
Writers need to stay in business, right? Black is the new orange, orange is the new black. It's got to constantly change. I think the CMTO concept was hot in like the late 2015, 16, 17, 18 timeframe, and then disappeared. I do see marketing leaders being forced to be technology leaders. I don't think that's different. I think the idea of trying to say it's a thing, I think everyone realizes it's a thing. And so maybe the terminology is no longer necessary. But the roles changed a lot. If you think about, I don't know, I think you work with CMOs and talk to CMOs all the time. But if you look at the profiles of the people that get hired, and I talk about this a lot when I mentor and I work with people who are like, I want to be a CMO. And I always say, it's the worst job. You don't want it. Try something else. Once they get past that gate, they're like, no, I really do. It's great. Okay, who hires? Like, what's the profile of the modern CMO? And if you look back in time, the profile used to be very creative, right-brained, almost advertising-oriented people. And that applied to B2C and B2B. I think it was universal, right? Brand first thinkers. And I think that's super important still. But the profile of CMOs these days tend to be a lot more demand gen, which you could argue is left brain, math, or product marketing, which is more technical and storytelling oriented. And I think that reflects the evolving state of the CMO. I think there's good things in there and there's bad things in there that we can probably unpack today.
You know, as a busy mom, there are a few ways you can build strong muscles. You could get a gym membership, which you'll never use, buy all sorts of expensive equipment for your garage that you'll forget you have, pay for a personal trainer that you'll never have time to meet with, and buy a fitness watch that only makes you sad every time you look at it. Or you could go for an easy run and try some milk, which helps build strong muscles. Visit GonnaNeedMilk.com for more info. And please, don't make yourself sad.
Stop over in Qatar and enjoy pristine beaches and vibrant souks. Relax in a 5-star hotel from just $48 per night. Go to visitqatar.com/stopover. Terms apply.
Yeah. Talk up to me a little bit about how you think about how do those things work together, right? Like when they come together, you've got to create demand, but you've also got to have a good story to tell.
Those are highly related. It gets bad. I think things break when the CMO function gets rotated underneath the CRO function, and it just becomes a discipline of sales. Because it breaks the promise. Like the promise of marketing is that we represent the customer over its lifetime in the future, and we don't have a quarterly boat anchor that sales teams do, or monthly or daily or whatever your close is. And when you rotate it over there, I think it breaks that promise. It breaks trust, and it changes the dynamic dramatically. So I'm pretty against that view. And there's lots of reasons, like seat at the table, influence, representing the customer to the C-suite, having that level of influence. But most importantly to me, it's the promise to the customer that you'll think about them beyond the transaction. And that's so important in a modern SaaS world. I say all the time, when you sell something to someone today, you've actually only just earned the right to start selling, as opposed to in the old world where when you sold something to someone, you earned the right to never talk to them again. And that's not good. And so the modern way really is marketing customer, you can say just customer centric, CX centric, et cetera. And then I think as an independent entity, you get sometimes overly aligned to show me the math. Like this is the number, prove the pipeline, show me the efficacy, and all that's super important. And we're so lucky from your digital side of the world of this, right? We have access to an incredible amount of information and metrics and data that we never had before. So we made it up. What's 50% of it works? We just don't know which half. Like we don't have, that's not true anymore. We actually have a lot more data that tells us like 70% of it works. And we sometimes know which part works. It's like way better. But you get overly aligned to that Pareto optimization and you forget that the marginal return actually goes away if you forget to invest in brand, you forget to invest in stories. And that's where I see things breaking a lot these days, because we're in the economic climate sucks, everyone's contractionary, everyone's thinking about where they can drive profit and EBIT. And so it's very easy to say, oh, I can't spend on awareness and engagement or community. And I actually think there's no way to prove this. There probably is a way to prove it, but it's too expensive. You wouldn't want to pay to prove it. You have to believe in the religion. Those things become critical at driving high value outcomes with demand.
Do you feel like you talked about you've got your technology component of your job as well? Do you feel like that's a secret weapon helping you bridge these things because you've got a little bit more control over your stack?
Having control over the stack is nice,
right?
Because control is a great thing. No one doesn't like that.
That's right.
But I don't think of it as a secret weapon. I think of it as a table stake situation. If you're not leaning into modern marketing technology concepts and infrastructure at this point, you're dead. And so it's not a secret weapon. I just think it's basic.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. One of the things you said to me the last time we were talking was you talked about this concept of a lack of novelty is not a bad thing. And I'd love for you to tell me I'd love you to tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that as it relates to marketing in particular.
Yeah. I maybe I'm like an outlier, but you get stuck in this I need new things world. I think marketing is a victim of this. Oh, I built this thing and I shipped it yesterday, so now I need a new thing. No, actually, you need to do the old thing until you're so bored of it and then keep doing it. And so there's this need for new that sometimes doesn't actually do justice to the investments you make. So I think forgetting that the creation of a thing is not important. Like that's one aspect to it. In the context of the novelty piece, look, a lot of organizations, SolarWinds is guilty of this too. Sometimes thinks they need to invent, I say, new physics in order to solve problems. And I think that's false. The vast majority, and there are new types of problems that do require novel outcomes, novel thinking, novel approaches, new ideas. But the vast majority of business problems that we face are not novel. They do not require new physics. They do not require tons of ingenuity. They require focus, discipline, and execution. And I think you'll hear there's lots of euphemisms like, oh, it's not about the idea, it's about the execution, right? That's true. Companies succeed with execution, not necessarily with ideas. Ideas are cheap, whatever. There's a lot of things we can say. But that's what I mean when I think like having lack of novelty is not bad. Like standing on the shoulders of giants. There are lots of you're a startup. Hey, you're one of our audiences, a startup CMO. There's 5 of you. You don't need to invent anything because Google and Microsoft and Salesforce and Oracle and HubSpot and all these big companies, they did all the hard work. So you can just copy them, or at least copy a version of what they think. Now you can, so there's just things you can learn from others and apply, pattern match, and connect. It's not like one-to-one, but you don't need to create a new world. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like get the basics right, focus on execution, don't chase shiny pennies.
Oh man, chasing shiny objects and bright shiny object syndrome for sure. Every CEO has that disease and we fight it for sure. And it's important because again, if you get bored of something too soon, you've wasted a lot of investment. It costs a lot of money to build something. And when you're like, oh, I saw that once. I'm like, yeah, you saw it, but did anybody else see it? How many customers do you have? What's the world look like? How long should that run, be in market? The cost of change of a campaign or a tagline or an asset is quite high. And so there's a lot of that. It also bridges sometimes into this world of category creation, right? Everyone's, I'm going to go create my new category. There's good research and thinking that in some winner-take-all markets or oligarchy markets, that's really important. But most people don't have that luxury. I think they end up chasing a ghost. That's not possible. So how do you design an existing category to fit in for your niche? How do you go and architect into something that already exists or bridge it?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Like a couple of things stand out that are tangentially related to what you're talking about. One is on the advertising front. I think there's a group out there, a friend of mine works at System One. They test advertising and they have yet to find wear out of ads. Like we get tired of them as marketers, and so we want to create new ones, but very rarely has an ad actually ever wore out. So
certainly not in a time frame that like is human based, like 365 days. Like no way. Are you on year 3 of the ad? Like maybe. But
yeah, exactly.
But that's great to hear that data. That your buddy has that data on the advertising side because it validates, I guess, something that I just intuitively believe. I don't have data, but I know, and I guess there's data. Like I'll run something in market and I'll talk to someone and say, did you see this cool thing we did? And they're like, what are you talking about? Which happens like 99% of the time. But your salesperson or your employees are like, God, I am so sick of seeing the same thing. I'm like, yeah, but you're looking for it. You're not the right
audience.
You're not the right, you shouldn't get a vote.
Right.
Your vote is, you don't have the right perspective, so you shouldn't get a vote. And I do think that can drive really bad behavior where if you want a message to land in market, you have to be patient. IBM was like the best at this back in the day. They would run these campaigns for 8 years. Their AI campaign, right? The Watson campaign's like 20 years in. They have the E campaign. Like they were so good at being hyper committed, for better and for worse sometimes, like hyper committed to a concept and run it for super long period of time. I remember doing a case study on them like 2003, 2004, how great they were at that. And I think Apple's good at this now. They tune things, but they haven't changed much.
No, not much at all, actually. Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the consumer space. In enterprise software, it's different, but not all that different. Like, you're targeting people, you're trying to get mind share, and we get bored of our message and then be like, why isn't it working? It's only been in market for 2 weeks. Why it's not working?
Because of that fact alone.
Yeah,
exactly.
Ask me in 2 years, and no one's paying. And that's where things start to break apart. That's why this CRO thing. Show me a marketing function that's living and dying by demand gen only that can survive long enough to prove out a thesis that's customer oriented in the long run. They can't. And so I think there's just a lot of bad marketing out there right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I've enjoyed getting to know your perspective on marketing. I want to turn the table a little bit. And we know you had an early brush with fame.
Yes.
But my question I love to ask everyone that comes on the show is, has there been an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you are today?
Yeah, obviously, failing on that game show has totally defined me. I think there's, you even prepped me for this question. I thought about it, and it's a tough one for sure. I think there's experience, like work experience. Like, I have life experiences that have defined who I am today. When you're like being bullied as a kid or different ways of generating thick skin. But I think we all deal with those different things that are defining. In the work context, one of the things that has defined my journey for me was actually changing job. I worked at Microsoft for a long time, 10 years. And then I went to work at Google, which at the time, those two companies were about as different as they could possibly be. And I didn't appreciate at all at the time that just because I knew how to do something at some company, that IQ and conviction and history would at all translate to a different environment. It was like I could jump on Earth, but I went to Mars and I could no longer jump, even though it's the same kinetic mechanics. I think that's been really defining. Once I realized that bug, because I screwed it up real bad at the beginning. Like, oh, you thought you knew everything. You didn't bring the right humility. Like, you didn't know how to ask questions. You're like, yeah, I know how to do that. And you're like, no, actually, you don't. Here. And I think a lot of people get to, and this is like a duration problem. Like, the switching jobs help. What helps? You can always learn more context, but can you learn more culture in an organization? I actually believe the answer is no. Culture learning caps well before context learning caps. At big companies, context learning can be infinite, but culture learning doesn't really change. You learn how to operate in an environment. And so that's been really defining for me. And I've had a lot of jobs. My wife likes to joke, you can't keep a job. I'm like, well, but it helps learn how to be effective faster and how to be more adaptable into a new environment. I was literally talking to an employee today who was leaving and been at the company for 12 years. Amazing run. And I gave him the advice. I'm like, look, you know how to fly a Boeing aircraft. You're going to go fly a Airbus aircraft. It's still an airplane, but you actually have no idea how to fly. And so take the time, be patient and humble, and learn. Even though you know how to fly, the mechanics are different. And that's going to be a huge impact. That to me is super defining on my work career and how I manage and how I lead and how I think today.
I love it. What advice would you give your younger self if you're starting all over again?
I would tell my younger self, you're not that busy. And just shut up and realize that. I don't know. You always go through this. I'm so busy. Like, how many times have you said that to yourself? And then 2 years later, you're like, I was so not busy at all. I don't know. I have a young kid and I'm having another kid soon. And I know I felt so busy and I know I am not busy relative to the next. So if I could tell 18-year-old version of me, like college version of me, you think you're so busy, but you actually have infinite free time. You just don't realize it.
Yeah.
I think you'd be better off.
No, that's so true. I wish I could find another word. Maybe I just need to be bored, because I fall into that trap too of somebody will ask how you're, I'm great, but I'm busy. And I'm not, that is not the right thing to be saying.
It's not. And I agree. I have the same lack of work. We all say the same thing. Like, it's busy. It's just normal. Like, busy is normal. So there's this infinite more busy thing, and it all falls apart. Yeah, we don't have good English language has failed us, is what I would say, Alan.
I agree. Is there a topic either you're trying to learn more about or you think marketers need to be learning more about?
This is trite, but it's the right answer, and it's AI broadly. full stop. There's nothing that's going to affect our business more. It's already affecting our business more, and not SolarWinds, but the function of marketing in so many ways. It's everywhere already. This is old day. This is old news. If you'd asked me, I remember was it Thanksgiving 23 when ChatGPT came out? No, was it 22? I think it was 23.
I think it might have been 23.
Yeah.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving. It came out, and I think it might have. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving 23. So it's been like a year. And maybe it's 2 years. I don't know.
You should Google that.
Facts right. But the point is, then you could tell it was changing the world. And now it has changed our world so much. That's the area we have to learn more about. And the grift is on big time right now. And I think that's what makes it so hard, which is why you have to learn. Like every single company says they're an AI company, which is bullshit. And every product has an AI thing and that changes the world. It's like, what's real and what's fake? What's actually going to change? At what time frame? How does it get incorporated? What are the risks? There's so much compliance and regulatory things that are coming down now. So if you're a marketing leader and you're not thinking about this every day, you've got a problem.
Yeah. You're definitely going to fall behind. That's for sure. Are there any trends or subcultures that you are following, taking notice of, you think other people should think about?
In the context of this, it's not a trend or a subculture per se, but as an emerging old person, I look a lot at the generational shift that's occurring between boomers, Xers, millennials, digital natives, or Gen Ys, whatever, Gen Z, and all those things that have happened. And to me, there's a fascinating interplay happening right now. And I do think marketers who are key culture leaders in their organizations, they have to be thinking about that because it's radically different, and how that in fact impacts thinking about how we work, how we collaborate, physical space, style, what matters and doesn't matter, what motivates and doesn't motivate. In my organization, I own internal communications and our employee brand work. That's not always in marketing, but it's always a marketing and HR partnership. And therefore, so is culture. And so these things, I don't think it's a meme or a subculture, but it's a fascinating meme/subculture adjacent concept that I spend a lot of time thinking about these days.
Yeah. You're right. It is shifting and changing. I think I have a 17-year-old daughter, and she's starting to think about what she wants to major in college when that time comes. And what she looks at me and what I do for work. She looks at my wife and what she does for work. And she has a completely different concept of what work is, or what she would work to be, maybe is a better way to think about it.
I think the relationship with work, and so your daughter was a pandemic victim, right? So she has a completely different worldview. And I think it's hard. When I look at people that were in high school and college during the pandemic, I think it's hard for people who weren't in high school and college during the pandemic to truly understand the impact that's had on them across every dimension, psychologically, needs. I think we're still learning it. There's a lot of literature on this, but it's not well developed. And it's going to have a huge impact as that group enters the workforce. Like the college-age kids are now in the workforce, and they just have totally different value systems that were heavily influenced by the pandemic. Not to say it didn't affect everybody else. Every parent I know was like ready to jump out the window. They had kids in remote school. It was like, how do I have a third-story window? But it's an interesting area, and it's not marketing's job. But if you think about it, like we have a responsibility not just for building the company outside the building, but for building the company inside the building. And so all those things matter.
Marketing is definitely I think you said the word culture leader. It's not by itself the only culture leader, but we are putting out to the market what the company represents that needs to be authentic to who the company is. And it's also a yin and a yang, right? What we do outside the four walls of the company is motivating to inside and vice versa. So
totally.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street, right? Because what you project externally matters. What you project internally matters. They're hyper-related. I don't know. We just did a big event in the Middle East, actually. And we did out-of-home advertising, like the first time ever, like in the airport in Dubai, and like people's heads explode internally. I'm not convinced it moved the bar materially externally, right? Like a little bit of brand awareness, but internally it was so powerful and so motivating and so exciting for everyone around the globe. Like, how do you value that in that investment? You spend X dollars to do it. We did as a company in Poland, we bought they're bus ads, but they weren't buses, they were trolleys or like.
Gotcha. Yeah. Trams or something.
And I heard it was super powerful for the company when they did that a while ago. So I guess it's not the first time they've done it, but it was a very limited HR driven thing. We did a marketing driven thing. It had a huge impact. That stuff matters.
It does. Well, last question for you. What do you think is the largest opportunity or threat facing marketers today?
It's AI. It's the same thing, right? You get replaced by a robot, and how do you shift your value to not be replaced by a robot? And I think that's a huge threat. And I know no one wants to think about jobs are going to get taken by robots, but they are. Believe whatever hype you want. There are whole disciplines that are going to cease to exist because at some point, probably not that far from now, it won't be super needed because the robots will do a good enough job, if not better. And so I do think it's a threat to some functions that need to rethink. Think about your daughter going to college. And for the last decade, everyone wanted to be a computer scientist. If you're like, I'm going to go make money, those are the jobs I should get. I got to go. And I went to school, the program, I went to Duke, and the smallest program we had was computer science. No one wanted to be in computer science. It's not our thing. Now it's the biggest program at the school.
Right.
That's huge change. And so you think about the impact of AI and Copilot type of things in computer science. What does that even mean? Is it really a special skill anymore? Is it hard anymore? We used to talk about the 10x engineer and the 1x engineer. Like maybe for the 10x engineer, the world's fine. But if you're not the 10x engineer, what happens to you? How much gets replaced? Like those are the things people need to think about. I don't think anything's any different in marketing. And it's not tomorrow. We're all looking at chatbots and conversational intelligence. And I saw a cool AI agent company that was doing sales training where you put reps in a room with a human that was not a person. It was a robot that was dressed up like a person and they didn't know, or maybe they knew, but they couldn't really tell. And it was doing role plays better than the person. So if your job was the role play job, you probably don't have a job in 4 years. Because the AI agent will do it. There's a lot. It's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
But it is the biggest threat. It's also the biggest opportunity at the same time.
When it feels, I don't know if you would agree with this, but it feels like people that are going to figure this out, like how do I work with AI, not against it? They're at least going to win in the short term, right?
Oh, yeah. And you talk about order months or even a couple of years. Absolutely. And it's tough because of regulation and compliance and fear of lawsuits and data leakage. And like, how do I not become Samsung and put all my code into the foundation model? People are scared. The pendulum swung. And so there's going to be a lot of accelerated value. And then I think part of the challenge is at the very beginning, you could use the words the robots wrote, but now they're all the same. So everyone's got the same boring baseline, unless you know how to really do a good job, which is rare. So that window came and went in 12 months, 24 months.
That's awesome. Brian, I want to just thank you for coming on the show.
Thanksgiving, which
2022. So it has been 2 years.
It's been 2 years.
All right.
2 years that I had to go ask a robot because my brain isn't big enough.
We're proving that people that work with AI are going to survive. We just survived this podcast.
Oh, it was good. It's good. The listener, maybe.
Brian, thank you for coming on and sharing all the conversation we have about where marketing's going, what we should be thinking about the CMO role, and how to work with AI, not against it.
Yeah. Awesome, Alan. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me with post-production support from Sam Robertson. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe on marketingtodaypodcast.com. Tell your friends and colleagues about the show. I love hearing from listeners. You can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com. There you'll also find complete show notes and links to what was discussed in the episode today, and you can search our archives. I'm Alan Hart. and this is Marketing Today.
You know, as a busy mom, there are a few ways you can build strong muscles. You could get a gym membership which you'll never use, buy all sorts of expensive equipment for your garage that you'll forget you have, pay for a personal trainer that you'll never have time to meet with, and buy a fitness watch that only makes you sad every time you look at it. Or you could go for an easy run and try some milk, which helps build strong muscles. Visit GonnaNeedMilk.com for more info. And please, don't make yourself sad.
So good, so good, so good.
Perfect gifts? We've got them at Nordstrom Rack stores now. UGG, Nike, Barefoot Dreams, Kate Spade New York, and more. Find everything on their wish list all in one place.
Steve Madden? Yes, please.
It's perfect.
Did we just score?
The greatest gifts of all time? Yeah.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to score. Great brands, great prices, the greatest gifts of all time.